Cognitive linguistics, CL, refers to the branch of linguistics that interprets language in terms of the concepts, sometimes universal, sometimes specific to a particular tongue, which underlie its forms. It is thus closely associated with semantics, but is distinct from psycholinguistics, which draws upon empirical findings from cognitive psychology in order to explain the mental processes that underlie the acquisition, storage, production, and understanding of speech and writing. Cognitive linguistics is characterized by adherence to three central positions. First, it denies that there is an autonomous linguistic faculty in the mind. Second, it understands grammar in terms of conceptualization. And third, it claims that knowledge of language arises out of language use. Finally, cognitive linguistics argues that language is both embodied and situated in a specific environment. This can be considered a moderate offshoot of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, in that language and cognition mutually influence one another, and are both embedded in the experiences and environments of its users. Cognitive linguists deny that the mind has any module for language acquisition that is unique and autonomous. This stands in contrast to the stance adopted in the field of generative grammar. Although cognitive linguists do not necessarily deny that part of the human linguistic ability is innate, they deny that it is separate from the rest of cognition. They thus reject a body of opinion in cognitive science suggesting that there is evidence for the modularity of language. Departing from the tradition of truth-conditional semantics, cognitive linguists view meaning in terms of conceptualization. Instead of viewing meaning in terms of models of the world, they view it in terms of mental spaces. They argue that knowledge of linguistic phenomena, i.e., phonemes, morphemes, and syntax, is essentially conceptual in nature. However, they assert that the storage and retrieval of linguistic data is not significantly different from the storage and retrieval of other knowledge, and that use of language and understanding employs similar cognitive abilities to those used in other non-linguistic tasks. Embodied and situated. This section requires expansion. March 2014. Areas of study. Cognitive linguistics is divided into three main areas of study. Cognitive semantics, dealing mainly with lexical semantics, separating semantics, meaning, into meaning construction and knowledge representation. Cognitive approaches to grammar, dealing mainly with syntax, morphology, and other traditionally more grammar-oriented areas. Cognitive phonology, dealing with classification of various correspondences between morphemes and phonetic sequences. Aspects of cognition that are of interest to cognitive linguists include construction grammar and cognitive grammar, conceptual metaphor and conceptual blending, image schemas and force dynamics, conceptual organization, categorization, metonymy, frame semantics, and iconicity, construal and subjectivity, gesture and sign language, linguistic relativity, cultural linguistics, related work that interfaces with many of the above themes, computational models of metaphor and language acquisition, dynamical models of language acquisition, conceptual semantics, pursued by generative linguist Jack Hendoff, is related because of its active psychological realism and the incorporation of prototype structure and images. Cognitive linguistics, more than generative linguistics, seeks to mesh together these findings into a coherent whole. A further complication arises because the terminology of cognitive linguistics is not entirely stable, both because it is a relatively new field and because it interfaces with a number of other disciplines. Insights and developments from cognitive linguistics are becoming accepted ways of analyzing literary texts, too. Cognitive poetics, as it has become known, has become an important part of modern stylistics. Controversy. There is significant peer review and debate within the field of linguistics regarding cognitive linguistics. Critics of cognitive linguistics have argued that most of the evidence from the cognitive view comes from the research in pragmatics and semantics on research into metaphor and preposition choice. They suggest that cognitive linguists should provide cognitive reanalyses of topics and syntax and phonology that are understood in terms of autonomous knowledge. Gibbs, 1996. There is also controversy and debate within the field concerning the representation and status of idioms in grammar and the actual mental grammar of speakers. On one hand, it is asserted that idiom variation needs to be explained with regard to general and autonomous syntactic rules. Another view says such idioms do not constitute semantic units and can be processed compositionally. Lang, Lotz, 2006.